We are still assessing the damage. Some of these areas are quite remote, and Sugarmakers maybe not have gotten into the back part of their tubing system. The damage you see right here is fairly common for what we might expect. Trees down over lines, both lateral lines, which are the small flexible tubing, and then the larger main lines, the ones that conduct most of that sap. And they can break them off. More often they just push them down onto the ground. There can be some damage. The big risk is that they don't get repaired before the snow flies and it all gets frozen in. That can really be a problem once you get into the sugaring season. Sugar makers need to go out and assess the damage. They need to see every line that's in their operation, check for damage, make sure all those lines are up and they're properly graded going into downhill. They also need to be safe. You know, some of these lines are under a great deal of tension. Not so much the lateral lines, but the main lines, the ones that have heavy cable and high tension. If you're using a chainsaw, you know, you gotta cover the basics of protecting yourself and being safe. Some of these things can really snap up very quickly, so you really need to be anticipating that. It appears that Sugarmaker is more in the north central, northeast part of the state were impacted. There was some damage down south and other places, but it seems to be more focused in the northern half of the state. And a lot of times the damage seemed to be on trees like a popple, which tend to shed their leaves later, and so it caught more of the wind. And those trees typically have a weaker wood and can snap off. We also saw damage with white pines and other conifers. They could fall, and in the process of falling could take out maple crop trees, but by and large maple trees are pretty wind firm and are able to handle these sort of events.
What are the top 3 things sugar makers should be doing this time of year?
Sugar makers this time of year typically are finishing installations of new tubing or replacing old tubing which has gone past its functional livelihood. So they'll be out there. It's much easier to work when the leaves are down. You can see farther. If you're trying to get your tubing system to be just at the right pitch, it's much easier to see longer distances in the woods. Making repairs is very important. Also anticipating potential damage is important too. Sugar makers will look to see, is there a dead rotten tree next to my lines? Now is the time to take it out proactively. It's always a good idea to leave some of those trees in the woods for wildlife habitat for sure, but if the tree has the potential for really taking out your lines, you want to consider that.
Should sugar makers be thinking about marketing right now with the holidays coming up?
I don't think there's a bad time to sell maple syrup. It's a very unique product. It's minimally processed. It comes from wild trees. It's only made in a few places in the world. So telling the story of what maple is, how it's produced, I think it's a really captivating story, and producers should really think about getting that story out there, even if it's a really modest campaign, just spreading the word. Talk to your friends and family who live outside the maple region. I mean, there's been so much growth in the industry that the local market is fairly well saturated, but there's lots of people, you know, in the south, southwest, who maybe don't have easy access to getting pure maple syrup. So, you know, talk to your friends who are snowbirds and see about, you know, maybe doing a little bit of marketing in those areas for sure. And then remember that maple can be used as a substitute for other sugars. So, you know, if people are baking, if people are cooking, you know, think about swapping it out for pure maple instead of, you know, the really refined sugars. The Maple Program, UVM Extension Maple Program, in partnership with the Vermont Maple Sugar Makers Association, put on 2 maple conferences every January. And these are all-day events. People can go and take classes ranging from beginning sugar making, sort of intermediate, how to lay out tubing, all the way up to the most high-tech equipment in the sugar house. There's also issues of sugar bush health, forest health, things of climate change, marketing, everything under the sun. And they can choose from over 20 classes, and it's really a great all-day event. There'll be 2 events. The first event will be in Brattleboro on January 20th. The second event will be in Hyde Park on January 27th. The program will basically be identical between the 2 events. They're all day. It's pretty affordable and really worth people's time. It's focused mostly on producers, but you don't have to be a producer to attend. Anyone who's interested in maple, is certainly welcome to attend.